Did Virginia Tech find the formula to beat Miami? Not really.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Big 12 is even more wide open than we thought it would be before the year on account of Cam Rising just can't find his way back onto a football field. And the G5 playoff chase is red hot and fascinating with a Heisman Trophy winner and an upstart program in Las Vegas. All that coming up on today's show. But I want to start with Miami. Friday night game. What did you think about the fail Mary or not fail Mary, or what did you think it was? I'll just let you know right now, I did not think it was a catch. I didn't think it was a catch live. I didn't think it was a catch on replay. Virginia Tech fans, you can sue me. You can come at me all you want. You can tell me this, that, and the other thing. I watched the replay and I thought, yeah, he never caught the football. He never, what in what world does he possess it and have it down? We can have those debates. We did on Twitter for a long time. We can continue them in the YouTube comments if you like, or we can talk about actual honest-to-God football, because like it or not, Miami's 5-0. And I don't think they found a blueprint to beat the Hurricanes that nobody else had been able to find before, or that nobody would be able to repeat again, or that, frankly, was some big mystery. Cam Ward is fantastic. I mean, fantastic. He's having a Heisman-caliber season. Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, has been really good. And if you watch Cam Ward for the last couple seasons, you know he's a really good football player. And then he can get the turnover bug. And he hadn't had that yet. He hadn't had a game where he couldn't take care of the football and he was getting a little reckless and he was making those plays where you're like, oh my gosh, that was scary if you're a Miami fan. He had one against Virginia Tech. And yet Miami survived. They didn't actually survive. The fix was in. All right, tinfoil hat conspiracy guy, you go for it. You go, Glenn Coco. You do it. So they go to Cal this week in a classic ACC showdown where College Game Day is going to be for the first time ever in Berkeley, California. And the Hurricanes, I think, are going to improve to 6-0 because Cam Ward has highs and he has lows. He's a guy who has peaks and valleys, low floor, high ceiling. We saw glimpses of both on Friday night in Coral Gables. You will see glimpses of both again throughout the season. But I don't think that anyone looks at this Miami game and says, oh, well, that's all you have to do is just pigeonhole them into here. No, Miami has shown you they can play with a lead. They can run out the clock. They can be explosive in the pass game. They can overcome a deficit. They can overcome sloppy play. They don't have one way to beat you. You look at a team like Michigan, they have one way to beat you. They're very good at that way. They have one way to win. If you get them down by 10 points and they've got to throw the football, no, that's not happening. Texas showed that in week 2, and Michigan's still the same sort of team. Miami is a team that can do a lot of different aspects towards win, or that can use a lot of different aspects of its team as the primary function of what makes it win a football game. We've seen that throughout the year. And if Cam Ward protects the football, then the game wouldn't be close. That game was this close to being blown open, and Cam Ward didn't take care of the ball. That's going to happen. That's the sort of football player that he is. It can rear its head in any given week. The issue for everybody else in the ACC is that if Cam Ward is not turning the ball over, then Miami's just a better team than everybody except for Clemson. This continues to be, on a week-by-week basis, more apparent to me that the ACC is a two-horse race. It is Miami, it is Clemson, and it is everybody else. Louisville, good team. Don't think they're great. SMU could be good. We thought the Florida State game would be a prove-it moment for SMU. Turns out beating Florida State isn't actually very impressive because the Seminoles are an abject disaster. I mean, What is DJ Uiagalelei? I talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show, back when Florida State was still relevant to discuss on a program like this one. What is DJ Uiagalelei still doing in there at quarterback? Why are you playing football, Mike Norvell, as if the 2024 season is going to produce anything positive? It's not. I mean, the interception at the end of the game where there's 3 defenders and there's just no hope of it being completed. It looks like a throw that I make all the time, though I'm working to get out of, in EA College Football 25. That's what it looks like to me. So FSU's a mess, but SMU goes to Louisville this week. If SMU has shrugged off the slow start, and if they have found their quarterback, making the switch from Stone to Jennings, and that's allowed them to unlock the potential that a lot of people thought they had before the season, then you'll go into Louisville, Kentucky, and you'll beat the Cardinals. I don't think they're going to do that. I'll just let you know right now. So I think for SMU, this is a big week, even bigger than last week. Like, this week is what last week was supposed to be. It's, hey, if you belong with the big kids, you will win that football game. And SMU has showed glimpses. They've shown potential, but we've seen the floor on that team as well. And it's losing to BYU at home, who's better than we thought, but I still don't think is great. And it's almost losing to Nevada on the road. That's where we're at. So the ACC is just a bunch of average. Like, Duke is a 5-0 team in the ACC right now. They're 1-0 in conference play, of course, with an epic comeback against North Carolina. Are they good? Pitt hasn't played an ACC game yet. They played North Carolina this week. I just the ACC. It is Miami and Clemson, and then there is a gap. And then there are a couple teams that are okay. And then it's 50 feet of crap. And then there's everyone else. That's the way the ACC shakes out right now. Under the radar game this week, speaking of the ACC, Syracuse and UNLV on Friday night in Las Vegas. Watch out for that one. I'm going to talk about that more later on today's show. But getting back to the Hurricanes here and putting a fine point on this. At Cal, at Louisville, host Florida State, host Duke, at Georgia Tech, host Wake Forest, at Syracuse. How many of those games do you think Miami's losing? I know they played poorly against Virginia Tech. They're not going to play like that every single week. They could have another game like that, but they found a way to win one. They could find a way to win another one. They could find a way to lose another one. I can't see Miami losing more than one regular season game. And the question for whether the ACC can wind up being a 2-bid league to the college football playoff will come down entirely to Clemson. Entirely to Clemson, who does not play Miami. Who does play, let's just say, a tougher schedule, though FSU doesn't look very tough this week. They've got Louisville, they've got Virginia Tech, they've got Pitt, and they have South Carolina. South Carolina, decent football team, but they have them at home. If Clemson runs the table and Miami does what I fully expect the Hurricanes to do, both those teams can get into the college football playoff and should be in the college football playoff. Not just can, but should be in. But if there's just one loss, then the only path to the ACC getting 2 teams in, that would be Miami winning at least 11 games and then playing Clemson in the conference title game and losing. And then Clemson gets the automatic berth as one of the highest rated conference champs, and then Miami would be in as an at-large. But it's Miami and everybody else right now in the ACC. My preseason pick to win the league. Feeling pretty good about that right now. How good is Colorado feeling? Boy, they're 2-0 in Big 12 play. Are they a Big 12 title contender? I don't buy them just yet. I don't. I've said that before, and I still don't regret it. That is coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, guess what? You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. And guess what? FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. #1. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel lets you do that, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Do you want to bet college football? Do you hear my picks every week and think, hey, Spencer has no idea what he's doing against spread. I'm going to bet against him. You can do it at FanDuel. Or do you think, hey, Spencer has every idea what he's doing against the spread. I'm going to bet that on FanDuel. I hope you have one of those thoughts. Either way, FanDuel is the place to go. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Check them out at FanDuel.com. Colorado, Big 12 title contender, the phrase that no one wants to say out loud, and you don't have to yet. At least not in my view. That's JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes, joining me here on the show. Look, I didn't think Colorado would win the game. I thought being a 2-touchdown dog or anything over 10 was pretty absurd, even going to Orlando against UCF. But so far, JT, Colorado looks roughly like the team I thought they'd be. Now, this was an impressive win. To me, this said more about UCF than it did about Colorado, because I don't think UCF is pushing to be a Big 12 title contender this year. It's a great win for the Buffs. I think it pushes them towards being a 7-8 win team rather than a 5-6 win team, and I thought they'd be 6 before the year. They might still end up there because they have a really tough schedule ahead. That's another reason I'm like, I don't know about the whole Big 12 conference title thing. What do you make of the Buffs after their big win against the Knights?
Incredibly impressed. This was the biggest win of Coach Prime's career so far, in my opinion, as a head coach. When you look at
TCU game 1.
Maybe, but we also saw what that TCU team ended up looking like at the end of the year, and we'll see on UCF. But I still think that after the Baylor game, there were a lot of people like, okay, is this team? I thought that was a huge test yesterday, and I thought they absolutely passed it. And look, here's the thing about Colorado. People don't like them because of all this stuff outside of football. I understand that. But at the end of the day, you have to respect what Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter continue to do week in and week out. Travis Hunter is arguably the best player in the sport. I would probably argue right now he is the best player in the sport for what he does on both sides of the ball. And Shedeur is simply, I still think, right, if the NFL draft was today, he's the first overall pick. I saw before the season started, you see people on Twitter being like, why is Shedeur that good? Like, is it just because of his dad? It's like, no, watch what he does week in and week out. Spencer, you and I talked about last year, 27-3, the touchdown to interception ratio. And we see again in a big game against Baylor, the throws and the plays he makes. Now, Baylor, I also think has to make plays last week, right? But still, Shedeur, the one to step up and make the plays, just like yesterday. When you have those two players, you have a chance. I'm not going to go contender quite yet. I still need to see more from their offensive line and from them consistently. That Nebraska game was not too long ago, but incredibly impressed yesterday when the entire world was pretty much counting them out. A big noon kickoff was there. UCF, it was their world. This was their moment, and it was Coach Prime's moment instead.
Yeah, it's a disappointing game for UCF because if they win that game, I think a lot of people do look at them as, hey, dark horse Big 12 title contender, and that's how I viewed them before the year. I didn't think they'd get to that particular level, but I need to see Colorado do it against somebody at the top before I'll go, oh, okay, yeah, they're at the top. But, hey, they haven't lost a Big 12 game yet. We'll ignore the fact that they needed a Hail Mary to beat Baylor at home just a couple weeks ago. But good football teams, they get better throughout the year. And you can't deny Colorado's a better team from a year ago, and they are better than they were in week 1. I think both those things are plainly obvious. I'm sure people will disagree with it anyway. One call in the Big 12 that I hit right on the head. Oh, before we go any further, BYU fans, I apologize. I did not believe. I did not understand. I did not buy in after the Kansas State win. I thought it was fluky. I still think it was kind of fluky, but I thought you'd lose to Baylor, and you went and beat Baylor. BYU's 5-0 for the first time since 2021. I kind of put them in the Colorado camp. Like, I keep picking against them, but I'm still in the, I don't know. I can't get there to where I put them at the top of the conference right now, but we'll talk about that more a bit later. Kansas State, though, I think has been there since before the year. I never bought into Oklahoma State, never thought they were a legit title contender. They are not going to make the Big 12 championship game after getting housed by Kansas State. Kansas State came out, and this is why I like this game from the Wildcats. I know they were at home, and they need to show they can do it on the road. That's a fair criticism of Kansas State right now, but just about the only one. They did not play well for a half. Avery Johnson turned the ball over. Oklahoma State was hanging around, and then you look up, and they beat them 42-20 at the end of the day. I was really impressed with Kansas State.
I was as well. I totally agree with you on both points. Really quick on BYU, just because I am the Locked On Utes guy. I am incredibly impressed with what the Cougars are doing as well. They surpassed my expectations, and the Cougars are already all fired up about that game, obviously, in Salt Lake City in a few weeks, and it looks a little different after how Utah looked yesterday. But shifting the focus back to Kansas State, look, I agree. That was a bad night in Provo. Things got away from them. All the special teams plays we saw, the craziness that happened. I think that was just one of those games for Kansas State, and it's incredibly tough to win at Kansas State. Yet again, they proved that. I think Oklahoma State is still going to be a solid team in the Big 12. I don't think they were, week in and week out, they're not going to get blown out by 20, but this just shows you the difference between a contender and a team that's in the middle. And Kansas State is clearly a contender in this conference. Oklahoma State is an offensive line problem. And I know that Ollie Gordon, his numbers were better yesterday, but you saw against an elite run defense in Utah last week that he could not get going the first few weeks of the season. He's their best player, and he's not able to get it going because of what teams are doing. Not even loading the box, I should say. That's also where the offensive line has to execute. And when the game falls on Alan Bowman's shoulders against elite teams, that's where it crumbles. That's why this team last year got blown out by UCF, got blown out by South Alabama, right? Like Alan Bowman, he can be awesome one moment and not so awesome the next. So this team has issues. The defense also not that impressive, right? Back-to-back weeks where you're like, well, Utah didn't score that many on them, but like, look at what Arizona's defense made Isaac Wilson, Utah's backup quarterback. They shut him down for much of the game yesterday versus Wilson made the plays he needed to make against a lesser defense, Oklahoma State. I wasn't a huge believer in Oklahoma State because of a lot of things that we saw as well before the year, Spencer, and I think they've only proven that, and I am still very high on Kansas State. Still a top 3 team in this conference for sure, if not maybe the best. Maybe Iowa State right now, but Kansas State probably next.
Here's why this conference title race is so hard to feel. I'd put BYU and Colorado in the same camp as Texas Tech. I like what I've seen so far. I just don't know if I'm ready to make the jump. Somehow Iowa State gets overlooked on this show. The Cyclones do not look half bad, but Utah is the best team in this conference. Except they're not. Okay, they're not. And I think what we saw over the weekend reminded everyone you need Cam Rising, and it is Lucy with the football, man. I'm going to play. Pull it away. No, okay, go back. Charlie, go back. I'm not going to pull it again. I mean, come on. It's a game time decision, but like he's going to play. All right, come on, Charlie. Kick the ball. Oh, Charlie falls on his butt yet again. Is this the most infuriating time to be a Utah fan where you look around going, we are better than these teams, but not without a starting quarterback?
I still think last year reached more inferior levels just because it went on for longer, right? This is only week 2. But I will say, I feel like a lot of Utah fans, because of all their pent-up frustration from last year, this feels even worse. I agree, Spencer. A healthy Cam Rising, I do think Utah is the best team in this conference still. People could look and say, well, you give 23 to Arizona. Well, Arizona looked a lot different yesterday than they did against Kansas State and even in the first few weeks of the season. And the truth is, what's the best way to beat Utah? You need a quarterback who can make NFL throws. Noah Fafita made some incredible throws in that game. The last drive, the 2 throws he made late, were some of the best I've ever seen a quarterback make inside Rice-Eccles Stadium. And that's Caleb Williams played at Utah a few years ago, right? Bo Nix was there last year. For those throws in particular, that's how good Noah Fafita was. So you look at, they made enough plays, but this comes down to the Utah offense yesterday. I mean, you have 3 drives where you get inside the 15 and you come away with 3 points. The first 2 drives in particular, you get no points. Back-to-back times, you end on downs. Like, it's
gross.
Disgusting. And
Not
you
good.
see that this Utah team, they, in the second half, because of their lack of just the success early on, they felt like they had to throw the ball more. Isaac Wilson shows his inaccuracies. I thought the play calling by Andy Ludwig wasn't great. And I also got to say, those Arizona defensive backs, I mean, there was also plays where there's more people open. And that's where you give a credit for them winning on the outside. Not Utah. Dorian Singer played very well, but there were other times where it's like, wow, Dorian Singer is well covered here. So give a lot of credit to Arizona for their big performance. I believe a fully healthy Utah team is the best in this conference, but here's also the problem. When Cam Rising comes back, once again, he still has to ramp up.
Don't say when. Don't say when. I'm not ever saying when he comes back. I'm saying if he comes back.
I'm with you. If he comes back, because I've never heard of a situation like this. I've talked with a few people just around college football. Spencer, you're another example. Like, have you ever seen a quarterback situation like this?
No.
2 years in a row where we're doing this, and Witt can say he was a
week after week. I mean, Utes fans have just got to be tearing their hair out right now in every sense of the term. I'm going to give you 10 seconds for this final question here.
Okay.
Who would you say is the current favorite to win the Big 12 in your view? Not in the betting markets, but if you had to pick one team to win the Big 12 right now, who are you picking?
Okay, I still would say Utah very biasly, but I will
also
say
that is some hard bias.
Through the first few weeks, Iowa State, I think, deserves the nod with Kansas State right there.
I think that's a pretty good answer. I think I don't know if there's a better answer out there. It's just any answer can be good. You know, people say, well, what do you think about this? Like, well, your guess probably as good as mine because this is a crapshoot. JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes. Enjoyed it as always, my man.
Thank you, Spencer. If you guys want to hear me rant more about Utah, you can head over to Locked On Utes because I'll be doing a lot of that this week.
Yeah, there will be some rants over there from my guy. I don't have a rant, but I do have another segment on today's show. Guess what, folks? I need to remind you all once again, there's going to be a group of 5 team in the playoff, and I tell you what, that playoff hunt for the G5 is heating up. We're talking about that next. First, let's talk about Game Time, which has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Do you want to waste your time doing that? No, I always say there are not enough hours in the day. Game Time helps you cut down on that. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you are looking for. You get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. They have their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will give you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Not tomorrow, today. What time is it? Oh, it's game time. This is your friendly reminder. There's going to be a group of 5 team in the college football playoff. Don't forget that. It might be Boise State. They look phenomenally good. And by they, I mean Ashton Jeanty, because this guy breaks about 7 tackles per play on average. That's not the actual number. It's probably closer to, 3.5 or 4. He makes touchdowns out of plays that most running backs would probably have be at most a 2-yard carry. And he just scores. He went for another 260 and a handful of touchdowns against Washington State. Now, this game was a lot closer than the final score indicated. Broncos kind of pulled away late, but Ashton Jeanty, there is nobody, and I mean nobody, that I can see in the Mountain West that's going to be able to slow this guy down. Oregon couldn't slow this guy down. And Oregon's defense, go look at the numbers this year, been quite good. They were not against Ashton Jeanty. He went into Autzen Stadium, went for 192 and 3 touchdowns. He is ridiculous. If Boise State continues on this trajectory, they will make the playoff, and Ashton Jeanty will be in New York City for this little ceremony called the Heisman Trophy. I am thoroughly impressed with what he's doing. Somehow he's even better than last year. Like coming into this year, we all knew from an outside standpoint, hey, Ashton Jeanty's a really good back. He's the best running back in college football. Don't make any mistake about it. He is the best one, and he's red hot. Dirk Cutter, the offensive coordinator, Spencer Danielson, the head coach, those 2 guys are in their bags right now, and they have got the Broncos inside the top 25 and playing some really good ball. And it's going to set up a showdown with UNLV at some point this year that who we'll talk about in just a moment. But Boise State could not have asked for a better start other than pulling the upset against Oregon, which they very near did. They were incredibly close to doing so. Oregon needed a last-second field goal to win that football game. That's what it came down to. That game was in Eugene. And Boise State went in there, and everyone's recognizing now, hey, Boise State is really good. And Washington State, good football team. Boise State beat them. They were better. Now, the final score was 45-24. It was a much closer game than that. Early in the fourth quarter, this was 24-17. And then a couple turnovers, questionable 4th down call maybe from Jake Dickert there to try to quarterback sneak. Washington State still can't run the football, but Boise State can. Boise State can just run the football. Is Maddox Madsen great? Nope. Is he capable? Yep. And that's all they really need. And here is Boise State's schedule. Think about this. Boise State plays Utah State this week. That's a win. At Hawaii, they haven't beaten a Power 4 or I don't even think a Group of 6 opponent so far this season. Then they play UNLV. So Boise State will be ranked inside the top 25. UNLV could be ranked inside the top 25 at that time. They are right now. I think they're tied with Texas A&M for being the number 25 team in all the land. Last I had checked on ESPN.com. Hawaii and Utah State are not knocking off Boise, and you're going to set up a showdown. And it is going to be an epic showdown against UNLV. But we'll get to that game when the time arrives. But then it's San Diego State rebuilding, Nevada rebuilding, San Jose State kind of rebuilding, but first-year head coach at Wyoming, not good, and then hosting Oregon State. That's Boise State's schedule. 11-1 is in the cards. 10-2 feels like the worst they can do. Between UNLV and Oregon State, you could drop one of those. I can't see them dropping both. Ashton Jeanty and the Broncos are just too good. But October 25th could very well decide who goes to the college football playoff. Boise State or UNLV. Now, of course, they have to go win the Mountain West Championship. UNLV is making me think of the first Star Trek movie. I'll get to that in just a sec. They housed, trounced, did anything they wanted to Fresno State. 59-14. That is not a bad Fresno State team. That is not. I think Tim Skipper is on his way to getting the head coaching job. He's the interim. He's got that tag this year. UNLV, I tell you what, 59-14. Here's why they made me think of Star Trek. There's a scene in the J.J. Abrams first directed Star Trek movie with Chris Pine where he's taking the Kobayashi Maru. And that test is designed to simulate what it's like to be a captain in a combat situation, and it's not actually a beatable test. So James Kirk, portrayed by Chris Pine, ever clever, just installs a little bug and makes it so that he can win. And so early on, when the enemy first appears, the crew's asking him, hey, shouldn't we do anything? Nah. No? Yeah, don't worry about it. Did he just say don't worry about it? It's a hilarious scene. Well, that's UNLV losing their quarterback, Matthew Sluka, in NIL. It's like, hey, you lost your starting quarterback. Isn't that a problem? Nah. Really? Have you heard the name Hajj Malik Williams before? You should, because he's the quarterback of a top 25 team and a bona fide Mountain West contender. And in his first game, he threw 3 incompletions, had over 300 yards total between rushing and passing, and 4 touchdowns. No drop off there. That was, if you're wondering why UNLV didn't just figure out a way to pay Matthew Sluka, maybe they knew. You know what? We don't like what that means for our culture, and we think this guy's capable. Well, he sure looked capable in his first game starting for the Rebels. Watch out for UNLV, because that's a team that plays another Power 4 opponent this week. On Friday, they play Syracuse. Yeah, Syracuse. Solid, respectable team out of the ACC. You want to put another feather in your cap? That game's at home at Allegiant Stadium, by the way. They've already beaten Houston out of the Big 12 and Kansas out of the Big 12. They've just demolished Fresno State and Utah Tech. They're building a playoff resume. If you go through this schedule, and heck, even if you lose to Boise State, if you then come back and beat them or whoever you'd play in the Mountain West Championship game, if that's your only loss of the year, you're going to college football playoff. Especially if you win this game. This is an opportunity for UNLV to win its 3rd Power 4 opponent matchup in its first 5 games. Barry Odom has got the Rebels playing football like they never have before. Like they never have in my lifetime, or really any lifetime. I believe they're 4-0. Someone can fact check me on the stat. Since sometime, they're 4-0 for the first time since I think Jimmy Carter was president. Might have been Ronald Reagan. I don't know, but it was a long, long time ago. My parents hadn't even met. So I'm really impressed with UNLV. They, along with Boise State, they're separating themselves in the Mountain West, and they are pushing for the playoff spot, and you best believe that league is the one most likely, especially with Tulane having 2 losses to Kansas State and Oklahoma right now. They are the most likely, and Memphis with a loss to Navy, I'll get to that in a moment. They are the most likely conference to put their champion into the 12-team playoff this year. That's where I'd put my money right now if I had to. But something I want to touch on here to end today's show. Are you prepared for the possibility of Army-Navy having playoff implications? Just remember, coming into this season, you look at the American and say, hey, they could get a team to the playoff. They absolutely could. You're talking about teams like Memphis, who lost to Navy. You're talking about teams like Tulane, who don't have a Power 4 win yet. And Navy, I'm just saying, and Army are undefeated right now. Now, Air Force last year was 6-0. They were rolling in the Mountain West and got these same sorts of conversations. Can a service academy sustain it? I don't know. I think there's fair reason to have doubts because it's hard to win at the highest level of college football when you are at Army, Navy, or Air Force, given the limitations on adding players and putting together a roster there. But Army and Navy are both undefeated, and they are both in the American Conference. And Navy has got the head-to-head win with Memphis. A team that before the year you would have said, well, that's a team that's going to the American Conference championship game. That's a team that's capable. They beat Florida State. Well, Army's 4-0, and Navy also 4-0. With that all-important win against Memphis, they put up 56 points in that game. This might not be your grandfather's Army-Navy football teams. Just watch out. Navy plays Air Force this week in what'll be a very cool game on CBS, but are you ready for that possibility end of the year? How great would it be? America's game in college football having playoff implications? It'd be kind of neat. There's a long way to go. One of you wanted me to discuss those schools and their hot start. It has now been discussed. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.